There is a silence that isn't peaceful. It's the silence after you've poured everything you had into someone, and they responded with a shrug. The silence where your soul is aching to be understood, but the other person just adjusts their collar and asks what's for dinner. There is no thunder in their betrayal, no grand betrayal scene, no final blow. Just an ever-deepening hollowness that spreads beneath your skin like ink in water. You begin to disappear. Not all at once, but molecule by molecule. And that's how it starts. Not with chaos, but with the gentle erosion of your sense of self. Have you ever stood across from someone who smiles at you, listens to your stories, and yet you leave the room feeling like you've been erased? You think you were in a conversation, but it was a performance. Yours. They were the audience. Silent, watching, judging, and feeding. You see, the most dangerous people are not the ones who raise their voice, but the ones who make you question the sound of your own. There's a kind of gaze that doesn't see you. It scans you, evaluates you, not for who you are, but for how well you can reflect back a fantasy. And if you stop performing, the punishment is withdrawal, coldness, silence weaponized. This is the terrain of the narcissist, but not the cartoon villain we've been conditioned to imagine, not the boastful tyrant yelling across the boardroom. The modern narcissist is subtle, charming, often wounded. They don't demand your submission. They seduce you into offering it, not because you're weak, but because they know exactly how to twist your empathy into a leash. And yet even the most elusive ego has an Achilles heel. There is a sentence, not loud, not cruel, but clear and exacting. A sentence that unravels their illusion, not by attacking them, but by reclaiming you. That sentence? I see through you. 6 syllables that burn hotter than 1,000 insults. Because to the narcissist, there is no greater threat than your vision, clear, centered, and no longer hypnotized. But before we speak that sentence, you must understand the terrain you're walking through, the landscape of their psyche, and the invisible architecture of the trap they've built, not just for you, but for themselves. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The narcissist has become a slave to their own unconscious, projecting their wounds onto everyone around them until life itself becomes a theater of shadows. To understand the narcissist, you must study not their confidence, but their terror. They are not inflated because they believe they're divine. They are inflated because they are haunted by the unbearable suspicion that they are nothing at all. Imagine a hollow sculpture, beautifully carved, covered in gold leaf, but empty. If you tap it gently, it echoes. If you press too hard, it shatters. They have built their identity on scaffolding, and you, yes, you, were recruited to keep it upright, with praise, with attention, with the delicate art of disappearing yourself so they can continue feeling grand. And what they fear most is your gaze that no longer flatters, your love that no longer orbits, your soul that remembers it was never meant to be caged. So let me ask you something. When did you first begin to shrink? Not physically, of course, but spiritually. When did you start tiptoeing around the truth of who you are? When did your voice become careful, calculated, edited for their comfort? When did you stop sharing your joy, your triumphs, your needs, because you knew deep down it would somehow become about them? That's the first symptom of narcissistic entanglement. Self-abandonment in the name of survival. Because they don't attack your body, they colonize your mind. And they do it slowly. At first it feels like love. It feels like being seen. They mirror your wounds with uncanny precision. They reflect your hopes, your fears, your traumas. They say the things you've waited your whole life to hear. You're different. You get me. I've never felt this with anyone. But it's not love. It's a scan. They are mapping your psyche, identifying your weaknesses, not to hurt you, but to build a story around them. A story where they are the main character, and you are either the savior or the obstacle. You'll notice it when you begin to shine, when your light grows too bright, when your joy is no longer a source of connection, but a reminder of what they lack. That's when the sabotage begins. Quietly, subtly, They won't yell. They'll sigh. They'll retreat. They'll offer faint praise with a subtle edge. That's great. I just thought you'd do something bigger. And if you speak up, if you name the manipulation, they'll twist it. Suddenly you're the aggressor, the ungrateful one, the drama queen. This is not a relationship. It's psychological warfare with velvet gloves. And you are the battlefield. Now let me tell you something else. The sentence, "I see through you," is not a weapon to use lightly. It's not meant to destroy them. It's meant to liberate you. Because the moment you say it, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but from a place of clear awareness, you are no longer under the spell. It's like waking up from a dream where you were running endlessly towards someone who kept vanishing. And suddenly you stop. You breathe. You realize the door was never locked. You were free all along. The narcissist doesn't need to be punished. They are already imprisoned, inside their own fractured psyche. But you still have a choice. And that choice begins with seeing clearly. In the next part, we will journey deeper into the archetypes Jung warned us about, the shadow figures that hide behind kindness, behind intellect, behind spiritual talk. You'll begin to notice patterns, not just in others, but in yourself. Because every narcissist needs a mirror, and healing begins the moment you stop being one. But for now, let this be your beginning. You do not owe your light to anyone who fears its brilliance. You do not have to prove your worth to someone who refuses to see you. And you do not have to stay where your soul is constantly edited for someone else's comfort. Because you are not a mirror. You are the flame itself. Some people will look you directly in the eyes while stealing the light behind them. And they will do it with such grace, such tragic softness, that you mistake the theft for love. You'll think you found a soulmate, a twin flame, a kindred spirit. But what you've really found is a mirror that only reflects what they need to see. You are not loved, you are consumed. To understand how this happens, we need to look at the ancient mechanics of projection. Carl Jung knew this well. He said that projection is one of the commonest and most dangerous psychological processes. You see, the narcissist doesn't see you. They see an image, an ideal, a fantasy. At first, it flatters you, but over time, you begin to suffocate under the weight of someone else's vision. You weren't born to be a symbol. You were born to be a soul. But to them, your soul is inconvenient. It disrupts their myth. So they reduce you, not with insults, but with roles. You're the healer, the muse, the caretaker, the loyal one, the soft place to land. They assign you these identities as though they were gifts. But these are cages, beautiful cages. Yes, but cages nonetheless. And the moment you try to step outside them, the illusion fractures. They cannot tolerate your wholeness because your fullness reveals their emptiness. This is the tragedy. They do not hurt you because they hate you. They hurt you because your freedom reminds them of their prison. So what do? They reframe your truth as betrayal. Your boundaries become abandonment. Your silence becomes selfishness. Your no becomes proof that you were never who they thought you were. And maybe you weren't. Maybe you never wanted to be the fantasy they projected. Maybe you just wanted to be seen, raw, imperfect, real. But the narcissist isn't looking for reality. They are hunting for devotion, not love, worship, obedience. And they do it through stories. Watch the stories they tell. They are always the misunderstood genius, the betrayed partner, the spiritual warrior, the unappreciated saint. And the villain? That's whoever dared to stop playing the script. But here's the quiet horror. If you've been entangled long enough, you begin to rewrite your own story to match theirs. You start to think, maybe I am cold. Maybe I am too much. Maybe I do expect too much. Maybe I am the unstable one. And little by little, your voice becomes unreliable, even to you. This is not accidental. It is the architecture of gaslighting, but not always deliberate. No, the most dangerous narcissists aren't evil masterminds. They are emotionally undeveloped souls acting from a place of unconscious compulsion. They don't gaslight you because they want to destroy you. They do it because they need you to doubt yourself in order for them to survive. That's why they're drawn to people like you. People with deep empathy, people with spiritual depth, people who feel things too much and love too hard. You were not targeted because you're weak. You were chosen because you're radiant. But here's the cost of that radiance. You become a mirror they both crave and resent. They need your light but hate the way it reveals their shadows. And so they oscillate. One moment, you are divine. The next, you are disposable. This cycle is not random. It follows an ancient psychological pattern, what Jung called the inflation and deflation of the archetypal child. At first, you are their savior. Then, you are their jailer. Then, their judge. Then, their monster. And if you dare walk away, you become the cautionary tale they tell the next person. But this is not your burden to carry. You were never meant to hold the weight of someone else's unhealed trauma. You were never meant to carry their wounds like sacred relics and call it intimacy. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real connection doesn't make you feel like a villain in your own life. And real truth? It's what finally sets you free. That's why the sentence, "I see through you," is so dangerous to the narcissist. Not because it attacks them, but because it announces the end of the illusion. Because when you speak those words, not with venom, but with clarity, you end the performance. You step off the stage, you walk out of the theater, and for the first time in a long time, you feel real. You feel whole. You feel you. But be warned, this clarity comes with withdrawal. Not just from them, but from the version of you that danced endlessly for their approval. The version of you that edited your truth into fragments they could tolerate. That version must die for your soul to live. And it will be painful. You'll grieve not just them, but the story. The dream you tried so hard to keep alive. The fantasy of fixing someone broken enough to finally love you the way you deserve. But fantasies are not futures. And you are not a fixer. You are not a salve for someone's spiritual infection. You are not the antidote to someone else's emptiness. You are not responsible for healing wounds that existed before you even arrived. Let that sink in. Let it echo in the chambers of your heart until it settles like a sacred truth. You do not need to prove your worth to someone who needs you to feel unworthy to stay. That's not love. That's dependency in disguise. And the moment you recognize that, truly see it, not just intellectually, but in your bones, the spell is broken. You no longer orbit their needs. You return to your own gravity. That's what individuation is, according to Jung. The process of becoming whole, of stepping out of the collective delusion and into your unique, authentic self. And that, dear soul, is the one thing the narcissist cannot tolerate. Not your anger, not your absence, but your wholeness. Because your wholeness reveals the lie they've spent their life defending. In the next part, we will go even deeper into the psychological blueprints, the inherited roles, the ancient archetypes that live in your unconscious and mine. Because the truth is, we all carry a piece of the narcissist inside us. The need to be seen, the hunger to be special, the fear of being nothing. But healing doesn't come from denial. It comes from seeing, from integrating, from telling the truth even when your voice shakes. So if you're still here, still breathing, still listening, you are already walking the path. And remember, no matter how loud the lie, the soul always recognizes the truth. You don't need to shout it. You only need to speak it. I see through you. Some people don't want love. They want reflection, confirmation, worship. They want to look into your eyes and see only themselves. And the moment you stop mirroring their fantasy, you become disposable. Not because you changed, but because you remembered who you are. The narcissist doesn't discard you because they're bored. They discard you because your authenticity threatens their illusion. When you stop playing the role they wrote for you, they don't know what to do with you. The script breaks, the mask slips, and they panic. Because their sense of reality depends on your compliance. But you weren't born to play a part in someone else's unfinished drama. You are not an actor. You are the author, the one who chooses what story to live inside. So what happens when you leave the script behind? Something strange. You begin to feel empty, but not in the way they made you feel. This is a different kind of emptiness, a sacred stillness, a space you haven't visited in years, the place where your soul waits, patient, quiet, ready. But that stillness can be terrifying because you've been running for so long, performing, pleasing, protecting, disappearing. To sit in silence with yourself feels like a free fall, and in that fall, you begin to meet the parts of you that were buried to survive. The child who tried too hard, the teenager who begged for approval, the adult who forgot how to say no. They're all still there, waiting, not for rescue, but for recognition. Jung called this the process of integration, the slow, deliberate act of welcoming back the disowned fragments of the self, the shadows, the shame, the strength. Because that's the hidden truth about narcissistic relationships. They don't just hurt you, they reveal you. They bring your unconscious patterns into the light. Why did you stay so long? What were you hoping to fix? Who did you think you had to become to be worthy of peace? These are not questions of blame. They are invitations to depth. Because once you stop asking why they hurt you and start asking why you allowed it, you step into power. Not the kind that dominates others, the kind that liberates you. The power to choose. To say no. To walk away without explaining. To feel without performing. To exist without shrinking. The narcissist cannot follow you here. Because this is the terrain of wholeness. And their world was built on fragmentation. They may circle back. They may reappear. They often do. Not because they love you, but because they love how they feel when you love them. But you'll feel it differently now. The old spell won't work. Their charm will ring hollow. Their stories won't move you. Because you've changed the frequency. You are no longer tuned to their drama. You've returned to your own music. And it may be quiet at first. Lonely. Even painful. But it's real. And from that realness, something miraculous begins. You stop chasing closure from people who cannot even offer honesty. You stop explaining your boundaries like apologies. You stop needing your wounds to be seen in order to be valid. You start living, breathing, creating, not for applause, not for approval, but because you finally remember what it feels like to belong to yourself. This is what Jung meant by psychological sovereignty. Not isolation, not arrogance, but the sacred ability to stand in your own truth even when it is inconvenient for others, even when it means being misunderstood. Because being misunderstood is the price of authenticity, and authenticity is the price of peace. You will lose people, but you will find yourself. You will lose illusions, but you will gain clarity. You will lose the drama, but you will rediscover silence. The good kind, the healing kind, the silence that doesn't erase you but reflects you back to yourself. This is the sentence that destroys the narcissist's ego, not because it wounds them, but because it reveals them. I see through you, not in hatred, not in revenge, but in stillness, in clarity, in the kind of love that begins with self-respect. You are no longer available for manipulation. You are no longer addicted to fixing. You are no longer afraid of being alone. Because you have met yourself in the ruins, and what you found was worthy. You always were. Now you remember. And now the final truth. You don't need to prove your light. You only need to stop dimming it. You don't need to convince them you are good. You only need to know it. You don't need to be seen by them. You need to see yourself. And whisper, soft but firm, one last time, I see through you. And I choose me. If you've made it this far, if you've listened with your heart wide open, even through the trembling, then know this. Your soul is already healing. The moment you dared to name what others dismissed, the moment you stopped begging to be seen and started truly seeing yourself, something shifted inside you. You're no longer just surviving, you're awakening. And if this message resonated with you, if something in your chest feels quieter, clearer, more certain, then you are ready. Ready to walk your path not in reaction to pain, but in service to truth. The kind of truth that doesn't shout but whispers. The kind that doesn't demand but invites. Here at the Mirror of the Soul, we don't just talk about healing. We live it in every breath, in every story, in every quiet return to the self. So if you felt something stir within you, subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to your own unfolding, your inner knowing, your sacred rebellion. Like this video if you feel called. Share it if someone you love might need these words in the darkness. And most of all, remember, this isn't the end. This is the beginning. The beginning of a life lived in truth, in wholeness, in gentle but unshakable sovereignty. You don't need permission to be whole. You already are. And from this moment forward, let that truth guide you home.